Today, we're going to talk about self-esteem, and specifically self-esteem for young girls. We're going to talk about what is self-esteem, what it is not. We're going to talk about why it's important, and then we're going to discuss how self-esteem will affect your child's future. And then I'm going to share with you some tips to help you recognize healthy self-esteem in your child, and also to recognize if there are some potential issues with their self-esteem. And why are we discussing self-esteem? Because it is the number one skill that every parent needs to develop in their child, especially if they want them to have a happy, well-adjusted future. For over 20 years, I have been working towards understanding and addressing self-esteem in women and young girls. I've helped young ladies to identify their level of self-esteem and to also help them recognize their self-worth. And why am I so passionate about this? I'm an adult, I'm a parent, but my children are grown. But the reason I am passionate about this is because self-esteem is one of the most misunderstood concepts out there. And the worst part is, it is so vitally important to each individual's personal growth and success. So my motivation for this comes from my own personal experience. And I truly know firsthand what happens when a person has unhealthy self-esteem. And I also know the transformative power of correcting and building self-esteem in the right way. Now, before you stop this video and say, hey, my kid, she doesn't have a problem with self-esteem, rest assured. Children today, specifically girls, they have a lot of challenges, more so than any generation in the past. And a part of that stems from them navigating social pressures today. When I was a young girl growing up, the internet didn't even exist. Access to it, I should say, didn't exist, and definitely social media. So our girls are really faced with a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, and so it's our job as adults to help them sift out what's true, what's not true, how it applies to them, and help them to really navigate these social norms. In addition to that, when our girls go to school, they have academic demands that they're facing. When I grew up, it was just like the kids in the neighborhood. We were all in the same pot together. And what did we do? We had our mother, our father, our brother, our sisters, kids in the neighborhood. And now we live in a very transient world, and our kids are really competing on an international level oftentimes, because you may live next to someone from another country, from another continent. And so it does put additional pressure on them to achieve success in life. And then on top of that, their little minds are going through self-discovery. They're trying to figure out who they are. And that is not an easy task. And if you think that I'm just making this up, or this lady doesn't know what she's talking about, let me tell you, please rest assured, there are experts, psychologists, healthcare workers who all have documented that self-esteem is vitally important for a young person to succeed today. And it is a game changer when it comes to their mental health. It's a game changer when it comes to their personal growth. And also when it comes to their general quality of life, day-to-day living. So let's jump in, and I'm going to take you on a journey to help you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Self-esteem in a nutshell is your child's personal foundation for self-worth. And I want that to sink in a little bit. Self-worth. Why does a child need self-worth at that age? This is what we're going to cover also. So, self-esteem is not about how you feel about your child. It's not how her teacher feels about her. It's not how her peers feel about her. It is how the child feels about themselves. And it's very, very important that we help them to have a proper self-esteem of themselves. And the only way to do that is just like anything else. There's a learning curve. But that's what I'm here for, to help shorten the learning curve for young girls so that it doesn't take them years all the way to adulthood like it took me. And it was a grueling task, and it really did take a lot from my life. But self-esteem also is very important because it will dictate every step, every decision that your child makes. I want that to sink in. It is going to dictate every step that she makes, her decision making, the friends that she chooses. Simply put, because it influences her every decision, her confidence, her decisions, even her future success. Now, self-esteem has several components. I'm going to use the acronym CRAWL, C-R-A-W-L. CRAWL stands for confidence, respect, acceptance, worth, and leadership. And we'll start with self-confidence. And that means that they believe in themselves. They believe in their abilities. And even though they may have challenges, they do know that it's okay to try, even if they don't succeed, even if they don't win. Confidence is actually what helps them to overcome that fear, and it allows them to be willing to take a chance, whether it's to join the track team, get on a spelling bee, be in a competition to see who's the best singer or the best artist. And they have to know that it's okay if they don't come off the victor. They need to try. They just need to put themselves out there. And it's what I tell young girls all the time. You need to show up in your life. And that's what we're asking them to do. We're not asking them to be perfect. We're not asking them to succeed in everything that they do. But with the more chances they take, the more when I say chances, let me clarify that. I'm not talking about things that put them at risk, but a chance for a new experience. Those are the kind of chances that I'm talking about. So when they do take a chance, if we help them to practice, if we encourage them, we help them to prepare for the opportunity, then they will find the courage to take that leap. And that's what it's all about. How many times have you, as an adult, done something that, I really don't want to do this, and you did it, and it was a great result, and it's like, oh my goodness, that wasn't as hard as I thought. Well, think about our kids. Their little minds are not as developed as ours. They don't have the experiences that we have. So as a result, they are a little bit more timid, and they do take it to heart when they fail or they don't achieve the level that they want. But that's what we're here for, you guys. Another thing about being confident, it's not about being fearless. Oh, I'm a Superman. I can do it. I can climb the top of the mountain. No. The confidence I'm talking about is helping them to learn that they can trust themselves and the choices that they make. And we want them to step out of their comfort zone. Otherwise, how will they ever learn? Okay, the next one is R, and that stands for self-respect. This means they're going to value themselves and they're going to treat others with kindness and dignity. So it means that they're going to value their own principles and not just try to fit in. Oftentimes, if a child does not have the proper self-esteem, what do? It's like, well, I'm just going to go along because I want them to like me and I want friends and I don't want to be left out. And they end up doing things that they regret later. So if we help them to honor their values and help them to make choices that reflect who they want to be, they will be so much happier for it. But sometimes they need permission for those things. They need to know it's okay to make a choice that may not be popular with the rest of the group, and that's okay too. The A stands for self-acceptance, and that means they are embracing who they are. Good and bad. There's no perfect person. I don't care how rich they are. I don't care how beautiful they are. They're not perfect and they don't have a perfect life. And the sooner our kids learn that, the more they will accept themselves. Maybe they're not tall enough. Maybe they don't have the best singing voice. Maybe they don't have the most beautiful hair. Maybe they're too thin. Maybe they're a little more plump than they want to be. But that's okay. You need to love yourself and you need to accept yourself. And that's very important that they learn to love themselves, because when they do, they will progress in life and they will not be torn down with anxiety. They won't be torn down with depression, isolation, and just losing enthusiasm for life. When our children accept themselves for who they are, they don't need validation from other people. They don't need approval from other people. And that's extremely important to know, that you can make a decision, even when you're a young person. You can make a decision and be happy with that and know that it's all right. Maybe your decision isn't the most popular. Maybe it's not the right one for the situation, but it is your decision. And along with that, our children will learn over the course of time that when they make a decision, there's a consequence, and it can be positive and it can be negative, but it is a learning curve. It is a way for them to grow and say, I learned a way not to do that. And I remember I read somewhere that Albert Einstein was being interviewed, and people were puzzled. They're like, oh my goodness, you've tried hundreds of times to create a filament that will work in the light bulb. Aren't you discouraged by that? And he said, heaven's sakes, no. He said, I just found out 200 ways it doesn't work. And I know there is a way, and I just have to find it. And that's what we want our children to feel like. They can keep trying until they work it out. The last one we're going to discuss is leadership. And that means we want our children to take the initiative to try something new. Everything's not going to be A+, 100, but when they make positive choices that align with their core values or the values of their family, they will feel more in alignment with life, period. And they will feel more self-satisfied as a result. So our young ladies need to crawl, C-R-A-W-L. They need to develop their confidence. They need to show respect for themselves and for others. They need to practice self-acceptance of their unique qualities, because they are unique. They don't need to be a carbon copy of the girl in the video, the girl on the commercial, the person on YouTube or Instagram or whatever social media platform is out there. They need to develop a love for what is unique about them, and it's our job to help them to identify what's unique about them. Now, based on the things that I've shared with you so far, I hope you are beginning to understand why self-esteem is so valuable. And parents, let me tell you, the things that I'm sharing with you, they are not things that I just dreamed up in my mind or thought, that might be the case. No, this is well documented by notable experts. And if you want to succeed, if you want your child to succeed, then sometimes we do have to look beyond our own little family circle, our little group, to see what really is working in today's world. And saying all of these things just reminds me of a famous quote by Henry Ford. He said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So your self-perception is vital. And depending on if you feel like you can, you're going to try harder. You're going to keep going at it. You're going to do so many different avenues to make it happen. But if you start out feeling like, man, no, I can't really do that, you're only going to give it a half-hearted try. And that is absolutely the truth. So we want them to let their self-perception determine their path. And so this quote that Henry Ford that I just mentioned, and his quote directly correlates with the CRAWL acronym, because it highlights the power of belief and self-perception when it comes to shaping their success and self-esteem. And now that you know what self-esteem is, let's look at the different types of self-esteem that are in existence. Recognizing the state of your child's self-esteem is crucial, because it will help us to understand the impact of their self-esteem and how it is impacting their life now and how it's going to impact their life in the future. So let's start with healthy self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem, it shows up with assertiveness. This means that your child is assertive, not aggressive, but assertive. And when they are assertive, it makes it very easy for them to express what they think, how they feel, without being worried that someone's going to judge them, without being worried that they're going to be put down or somebody's not going to be their friend as a result of them expressing how they feel. Have you ever gone out to dinner with people and say, hey, you guys, what do you want to have tonight for dinner? Oh, I don't know, whatever you want. No, just tell me, what do you have a taste for? And they can't seem to make up their mind. That's a sign that a person is having difficulty with their self-esteem because they are afraid of making the wrong decision. So we want our kids to be assertive, not aggressive. We want them to be able to say what they think and feel. Oh, hey, I feel like pizza tonight. What do you guys feel like? No, I feel like hot dogs. It should be that simple that a person can express authentically what they think and what they feel. When our kids stop being assertive, then they regress. And when they regress and they start going silent, that means they're going to start going along with other people's thoughts. And I'm not saying don't be in a group and don't let majority rules, but I'm just saying don't just have no voice, because when you have no voice, you're going to follow someone else's voice, and it may not turn out for the best. Healthy self-esteem also shows up in confidence. Confidence when our kids make a decision. Let's say there's a picnic that the school has planned. Everybody's going, and she goes to the closet. She's looking for what she's going to wear. She knows what day it is and what the attire should be. She picks out her clothes, and the next day she goes on the fun trip at school. But a child with anxiety, a child with depression, it is an overwhelming task to make the simplest decision. And we don't want that for our child. We don't want them hesitating and mulling over a decision. Oh, I think I should wear this. No, that's not my color because Brenda wears that color, but I really like that. And so it's enough to drive you mad, really. But our children are suffering in these ways, even if they don't tell us. Now, self-esteem also shows up in the type of relationships that our children choose to pick. If it's healthy, if it's a healthy relationship, they're going to want to align themselves with someone who they can confide in, who they can be authentic with, and who they can be transparent without the fear of being judged or it being blabbed all over the school, or even worse, on social media. In the past, we might tell one friend something and two people know. But now, stuff hits the internet, and it can be over the entire school, the district, over the state, and across the country. Things go viral, and unfortunately, it has caused some to take their own lives because they could not stand up under the pressure of everyone knowing a mistake or a bad decision. So this really is very, very important. I can't impress upon you enough how important it is. So let's jump to the other side of the fence, and we're going to talk about low self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem, we already know what that is, but low self-esteem is going to show up in your child's life as being heavy on self-criticism. No matter how well your child does, no matter if they put in 100%, they're always critical about it. It's like, oh no, that's not good enough. It's not pretty enough. It's like, I'm not happy with it. I could have done a better job. They're just never satisfied. And that is what happens when they do have low self-esteem. When you have a child that's hypersensitive to criticism or what they perceive as criticism, you may even easily remark, it's like, oh, that's a cute outfit, but I really like the blue one better. Well, they're going to be very, touchy about it and unhappy. And it's like, oh, so I don't look good in blue, or I don't look good in red, or what's wrong with me, or you don't like me, or you don't want me to go to the event, or no. That's not what we want them to feel. We want them to not overreact to small constructive feedback. But when they start feeling very hurt and being defensive, it is an indication that there's probably a problem with this level of self-esteem. Another problem is chronic indecision. For this person, they are so worried about making a mistake that they take an excessive amount of time to make a decision. And in the process of going over something over and over, oftentimes they just don't make a decision. And it's very debilitating because they are afraid of mistakes. And so they get stuck in life. And that's not a good place when you're young and you're just starting out. So overthinking every option because you're so worried about the choice is not a good thing. And now let me share with you just a little bit about my story. When I was a young girl, I don't want to say brutally, but I faced relentless bullying and teasing by family members, by my peers in the neighborhood, at school. And it's not that they were really intentionally trying to hurt me, but I took their comments in a negative way as a deficit. And as a result, I internalized those negative comments, and it made me very, very shy. I was afraid to speak up. I didn't want to voice my opinion. I didn't want to have an opinion because I was so afraid of being judged. I really felt like if I was quiet enough, they would actually forget I was there and I wouldn't be the target of any verbal abuse. And it was just very, very difficult. I avoided conflict because I did seek validation from other people. So I don't want to be at conflict with them because, after all, I want them to like me. So I would rather go along with what they say or just not say anything and follow the crowd. And that wasn't good. My lack of boundaries, it really lowered my self-worth because I began to doubt myself. And so when you doubt yourself, you just don't want to make any decisions. You don't want to do anything because you're afraid it's the wrong thing. Somebody's going to find out. There's a imposter syndrome involved in that. And you wouldn't think that all these things would go on in a young girl's mind. But let me tell you, it absolutely does. You feel like you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you don't match up to the other kids or the movie stars or the singers, the entertainers that you see on television. And you look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, I'm not that, so therefore I'm nothing. And that's very devastating. That distorted thinking will cloud their judgment and will definitely limit their potential. The good thing about this is, through the years of self-reflection, learning and tearing down the myths and taking small steps forward, I reclaimed my confidence and my self-esteem. And the thing about it was, it took me doing new things that I was uncomfortable doing and achieving a measure of success or even acing it to build up my confidence to say, yeah, I can. And why do I feel so bad about myself? Or why am I not going to try because I might fail? And I learned over a period of time to roll that back and to stop listening to those inner voices. And our girls do that. They have self-talk that's negative, and it can be very detrimental because who's more believable than you? You believe yourself, even if you don't believe your neighbor next door. You may not believe your parent, but you believe you. So if I say I'm stupid, I must be stupid. If I say I'm ugly, I must be ugly. And that is very serious. And this is why you see a lot of our young people in mental health crisis because no one is helping them to navigate through this, dissect it. And this is where therapists come in at times. People go to professional therapists or psychologists, whatever, to get help one-on-one in this kind of arena. The other good thing I learned about self-esteem going through the process was that it's not set in stone. You can have low self-esteem, but it can be repaired. It can be lifted up. It can be elevated, and you can move on. And so that's one of the myths that I really had to dissect, was that, well, if you feel that way, it must be true, and it's always going to stay that way. But that really isn't that really isn't the case. It can be nurtured, developed, rebuilt, and it doesn't matter where you start in the building process for self-esteem, whether the child is 5 years old, 10 years old, 20 years and beyond. The fact of the matter is, it can be developed. It can be rebuilt. And it doesn't really matter when you start, but what matters is that you do start. So I ask you again, does self-esteem matter? Of course it does. And that's a question you should really ask yourself. What does my child think about herself? I never gave it consideration. And a lot of parents haven't. But self-esteem is the foundation on which our children build their lives. Now, the mere fact that self-esteem is so important, you may wonder, well, why doesn't everybody have self-esteem? They come from a loving family. Well, there are several factors that can influence whether or not a person has healthy self-esteem. Like myself, early life experiences. While maybe those kids thought they were being funny and they were laughing and, making me the butt of their jokes, it still was affecting me in a negative way. And so it had a negative effect on my life, as well as it does with children today. And bullying is a huge problem in school because kids are just meaner than they used to be. I thought they were mean back then, but from what I hear, it's gotten a whole lot worse. So our kids need protection. They need someone to help them to put a protection around themselves so that they don't take it in, internalize it, and shut down. And remember, encouragement, it builds confidence. Criticism, you plant seeds of doubt. And I'm going to say that again. Encouragement builds confidence. Criticism plants seeds of doubt. And so we want to be careful as parents what we say to our kids. We don't want to say negative things, even if we think we're being playful and funny. Oh, you're so stupid. No, because after a while, the lie will become the truth in that child's mind. And now let's discuss another reason why a lot of girls don't have proper self-esteem. It is the social comparisons. We live in the age of social media, and it's a pretty rough world out there. And you would think that it was an opportunity for people to post about fun things, to inspire one another. But oftentimes, it is a nucleus of negativity and bullying that is unrelenting. And like I said before, some have taken their own lives because they could not take that social bullying. When you and I had a conflict when we're back in middle school, it's like you told your girlfriend, or maybe the class bully knew something about it. But now you look at social media and in a snap, it is all over the internet. Not only with your friend and their friend, it's now all over the city, in the state, nationwide. And if it goes viral, depending on what it is, now our kids are receiving so many comments, so many horrible things that are being said to them. And it's very impactful. And then think about this. On the other side, when it's not specific bullying, kids want to be liked. They want to be a part of the popular kids. And if I post something, or your child posts something, and they only got one click, oh, wow, that's devastating. And I looked at Mary Sue. She posted something very similar, and 100 people clicked on it. So it can just play with their psyche and just really debilitate them. And that's why we have to be really careful on how much time we allow our kids to have on social media. I'm a parent myself, and so I absolutely am speaking from experience, and it's not just something that I think maybe possibly. I know these are all real factors. Let's talk about another component, and that is mental health. When teens lack self-esteem, they struggle to trust themselves. And when they stop trusting themselves, they are more vulnerable to anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, and even depression. And when you stop trusting yourself as to what should I do, a child in their immature state of mind, their immature mental development, they will start trusting others, and they will seek out that approval. They will seek out information that seems credible. And as a result, sometimes they seek out information from someone who does not have their best interest at heart. And as a result, it can be very detrimental. And then we start talking about girls getting into human trafficking, sex trafficking, and all the other horrors that are out there. So again, self-esteem, how our child feels about themselves, is vitally important. Now let's talk about decision making. When teen girls lack confidence in themselves, they become unsure of their choices. And because they're unsure of their choices, it affects their confidence in the choice. And then they hesitate and they have self-doubt. And let me remind you, just because your child doesn't tell you that they're having these problems does not mean they're not having these problems. And if you're honest, think back to when you were a teenager. Did you tell your parents everything? Probably not. I know I didn't tell my parents everything, and I wasn't the better for it, but of course I thought I was all grown up and smart, and what did my old fogey parents know? And sometimes our kids think that we're out of touch because we are older, but we do have to help them to reel it back in and help them help themselves. So we have talked about a lot of things so far, and I want you to remember specifically that there are several types of self-esteem. There's healthy self-esteem, there's low self-esteem, and there's that sweet spot right in the middle, and that's where we're trying to get our kids to a healthy form of self-esteem. And remember that low self-esteem, it is like constant self-doubt and fear of making mistakes and always apologizing. And that's another thing. You'll probably hear someone say, "Oh, I'm sorry. But what are you sorry for? You don't have to be sorry. But they want to apologize because they didn't feel like they really made the mark. So again, we have to help them. And we have to recognize these indicators before we know that they do need help. There are myths out there about self-esteem. Self-esteem means you're arrogant, you're a narcissist, but that's not true. Healthy self-esteem is about self-value. And self-esteem is not set in stone. If you don't have it, you can achieve it. You can develop it. You can build it. And if you do have it, don't be so self-assured, because like anything else, that can be diminished, because it doesn't take a lot for someone to knock down the self-esteem of a child and kind of whittle away at them. And some people unfortunately do this, and it's such a sad state, but they will try to whittle away at a person who does feel confident and positive, and they will make little remarks like, "Oh, you're not so smart. Oh, you think you're hot, but you're not." And then all of those words will start to hurt. And when I was growing up, we used to say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." But that's not true. Words do hurt. They definitely do hurt. So the things that shape self-esteem, and why some people don't have it, is because of their childhood experiences, when they compare themselves to other people and to their achievements, their monetary status. These are all things that will make a person start feeling low about themselves. Social media can affect the confidence level in the child. and it can influence how they feel about themselves, especially when they're in the comparison game. And why does self-esteem matter? Because it affects everything: your mental health, your relationships, and even decisions that you make every day in just normal living. And we just have to recognize that self-esteem is not something you're born with. It is something that your child builds. They have to achieve it. I can't give your child self-esteem. I don't care how many workshops they come to, how many seminars that they attend. You can't tell someone and give someone self-esteem. It is a journey. It is a process. And I don't mean to infer that it's long, but I'm just saying it is a process, and we can help them to achieve that. So now we have covered what self-esteem is. I want you to make sure you check out my next video, and it's called The Perils and Consequences of Low Self-Esteem. And I think it'll be very enlightening to help you appreciate what can be done if your child is having a problem with self-esteem. Together, we can build a generation of confident and empowered young ladies. As I say today and always, change your mind, change your life.